Hi everyone, it's Pippa from the AD-vantage here, Specialist Support Services for Girls and Women with ADHD. Today I want to talk about emotional dysregulation, which can be a feature of life for people that have ADHD. Certainly speaking for myself, I can say I recognise it for sure. It does seem to be that although it's not a core symptom of ADHD, this is a common feature. Men, women, girls, boys, we all have extra difficulty around inhibiting our emotions, particularly around sort of managing our frustration, managing impatience and sort of excitability, I suppose. And so around those three, it tends to be where we stand out as being different from our typical peers. We also, when we are feeling emotion, we do tend to feel it a lot more intensely, deeply, in multicolour, more than our typical peers. Whatever it is, it lasts longer for us, leaves a bigger mark on us than other people, it seems. And also because of our impulsivity, we tend to go from the emotion to the action, immediately, without reflecting first. Oh, you know, is this helpful? Is this right? Is it appropriate? We get the big emotion, we act, and that can lead to some difficulties, obviously. And also, because we are lacking in dopamine, we're constantly sort of seeking stimulation, and those big emotional experiences are very stimulating. So you can see the kind of the trap, if you like, that ADHD people are in. The other thing for people with ADHD is that we tend to fall into one of two camps in terms of how other people perceive us, or so the first group, this would be me, is that we are too sensitive, too emotional, too easily aroused, get too carried away with their feelings, so this kind of thing, because we are emotional beings ourselves, but also we have a ability, some people with ADHD, to kind of feel other people's emotions. So like before the other people communicate their feelings to us, we can feel them. We can enter a room and feel the emotion that's in there. And in a way, that's kind of like good, isn't it? Like a spidey sense secret thing going on. But actually, that can be quite overwhelming as well, and sort of having other people's emotion sort of sweep over you like that. At the other end, we can be accused of being sort of cold-hearted and self-absorbed and disinterested and disconnected from people around us emotionally, because often we're literally so distracted by our own thoughts. It isn't that we don't care. It might be that we haven't noticed, definitely. But you can see that either end of these this kind of spectrum, it isn't necessarily great, is it? These are two difficult things to manage. So where does all of this come from? Well, of course, it comes from the fact that our brain is wired differently. We know that chemically and architecturally our brain doesn't look the same as everyone else's, and we also know that everybody with ADHD has impaired executive function. So executive function is it's the kind of cognitive and mental abilities that allow us to engage in goal-directed behaviour. It helps us sort of control our behaviour and make decisions to motivate us to prioritise, to meet our goals and prepare for the future. And in the other brained people, it does that all subconsciously, totally smoothly and seamlessly, but not so for us. We struggle with one or more areas of executive function. So there's a strong connection, of course, between executive function and emotional control. Our ability to think clearly and use executive function effectively is directly related to what we feel and how intensely we feel it. One key area of executive function is emotional regulation. Like, you have to be in the right zone, the right mood, if you like, to achieve a goal. And if your emotion is out of sync, then that's going to affect how successfully that happens. It requires us to use working memory another executive function feature, flexible thinking and controlling our inhibitions. And we also have to sort of pull out our self-awareness to be able to process and really sort of filter and reflect how we feel about things. And as I said, many of us, really struggle with that. So we're kind of up against it with our difficult brains, with the way we experience emotion, with our core symptoms going on. We're kind of on the back foot, and many people with ADHD report very extreme cases of emotional dysregulation. So it doesn't always show up in the same way for every person with ADHD. I'm just going to give you a few of the ways in which it might do, so you would recognise it if you came across it in yourself or a loved one. First of all, people with ADHD tend to get blindsided by their emotions. They tend to experience them quite suddenly. They don't feel them sort of creeping up slowly. It's just like, bam, I'm in it right now, feeling it. We don't seem to have time to reflect or think or consider. Instead, we have the big emotion and then we act, and probably that's going to generate more big emotion and so on. Often these big emotions, the ones that sort of overwhelm us, they are impatience, anger, disappointment, frustration, maybe aggression. Those things are the things that can sort of come at lightning speed. Also, we experience very intense and overwhelming emotional responses to stimuli which other people, it might literally just wash over them, but for us it catches us, and for no sort of good reason, as in there isn't like you can't really justify why you feel as deeply as you do. You feel really deeply, and once this happens, we find it very difficult to set that aside, to sort of park it, to be able then to focus on our goals and on our tasks, on our to-dos. We find that once we're in it, very difficult to put it to one side, which apparently other people can do. Also, we do tend to overreact and tend to catastrophize quite frequently. Whatever the trigger is, our emotional response can look quite exaggerated, I guess, and unnecessary. We find it quite hard to distinguish between sort of genuine threats to life and limb and existence to sort of just kind of irritating frustrations and things, which is hard for us and quite exhausting, actually. Also, once we're in the big emotion, we, like I said, we struggle to park it, and we can properly soak in it. That's called rumination, where you sort of replay the situation, you go over it and over it and over it, and you think, I should have said this, and next time I'm going to do that, and what did they mean by, and you're just, you're just kind of treading water, soaked in whatever it was, which is, we find it very hard to sort of pull ourselves out of there. We're often dwelling in uncomfortable emotions. Also, because we sort of flexible thinking, being able to sort of manipulate working memory and emotional inhibition, they are executive function skills, so we're impaired in that area. But the flexible thinking, we really struggle with that. We're kind of all or nothing people, and so it's hard for us to manipulate our thoughts, to sort of talk ourselves down or talk ourselves round, and get out of an emotional slump. And as a result of this, as people, we can feel quite negative and maybe a bit sort of, my glass is half empty, because our emotions have led us to a difficult and maybe a dark place previously. We kind of are expecting that to happen sort of on repeat. and to the point that we we can sort of ignore any positive feedback or positive things happening emotionally, because we're just always kind of on standby waiting for the negative. Like, the negative happened yesterday, so it's bound to happen today, just a question of time. You know, we kind of, some of us have a bit of that attitude, and to the point where anything good might not even be noticed, but the slightest negative thing will be under a magnifying glass. You know, see, I told you, look, see, something bad's happening. We just seem to be more in tune with that, and because of that kind of noticing of the negative, then our thoughts can be, our thoughts about ourselves can be quite shameful. We feel like we're somehow less, we're defective, we're not as strong as we should be, we're not as robust as we should be, we're not as mature as we should be, and then we feel bad. So then we have like kind of guilt, and you know, we're like, oh, you know, if only this, and I shouldn't be like that, and then I feel bad, and oh, it's all my fault. This kind of stuff whizzing around inside ourselves is definitely unhelpful, and will have a big impact on our sort of self-esteem, which isn't great. Also, because of our difficulty with emotional regulation, we can struggle socially as a result. And if we are adults, likely we have always struggled this way. We have been on the receiving end of, say, bullying, being isolated, being ostracised, being dumped, however you want to put it. And because a lot of times we aren't actually kind of aware and tuned into what is happening around us, the sort of social etiquette, the unwritten rules, things like that. And we often maybe speak when we speak out of turn, out of line, out of sync with everyone else, or we don't speak up when we should have done, or we take a side where that wasn't considered to be a smart move, or we don't take sides and that's not a smart move either. We can grow up with sort of enter adulthood with a kind of profound sort of anxiety around social relationships as a result, and we can feel that I don't know, we feel like you know, we're lucky if anyone does want to spend time with us, which is obviously not a very good place to be in when you're thinking about yourself. The level of distress we feel because of emotional dysregulation can cause genuine anxiety, like as in, you know, sort of clinical anxiety and even depression. We are exquisitely sensitive to rejection and criticism, or perceived rejection and criticism, and we can often feel quite sort of hopeless and demoralised because, you know, we do try really, really hard, and it's, you know, it's like you feel a bit like Groundhog Day. Here I am again, and it can feel sort of overwhelmingly hopeless, and we might say to ourselves, well, you know, what's the point? What's the point of trying to get this right? We so often get it wrong. And we often, well, particularly women anyway, or girls and women, we often like look at the other ladies or look at the other girls and we think, that's how to do it. So then we sort of pretend we're doing it like that, and hide behind there. Again, I mean, okay, I guess it's a strategy, and it means you're not lonely, but it's something that we're hiding behind because of this difficulty. So basically today I just wanted to shine a bit of a light on what emotional dysregulation can look like for people with ADHD, and to give you a little bit of background of sort of from where it comes from and why it is the case that we are often this way, and that's all linked to executive function, which is obviously part of our brain, and our, you know, we have beautiful brains actually. Our brains are just different, and there are definitely things that we can do to support better emotional regulation, and I'm going to do a second video on that with sort of tips of things that you can do to try and manage this aspect of life more effectively, more appropriately, so you will in fact have more joy. Okay, so thanks for listening.